question. So, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go ahead? Yeah. So, I've been involved with this issue for over 20 years. That was I got involved just like excuse me, Ellie Marks said about her when her husband was diagnosed. You know, that's when she became an activist and an advocate. And I got involved in this in 1997 when Vancouver School Board was going to put 9 microwave transmitters on the roof of my son's elementary school for for a wireless network. And I had sold the early computers for a major international company in the 70s, and the cathode ray tubes for those gave off strong radiation, and my customers who were in the typing pool, who were at that time all women, started complaining about adverse health effects, and their managers and my managers all said, well, they're just, you know, hysterical women, adverse to change, and you know, just ignore them. But they were intelligent people, and they were documenting what was going on with their bodies, and the pregnant ones were actually wearing the lead apron that you'd wear at a dentist's office, and they were being mocked, and I thought they were being prudent, and now their kids would be, I don't know, like 40 years old or 35 years old or whatever, and they've had a lot better shot at healthy life than what they would have had their mothers not done that. So I got involved in organizing community and opposing that installation on the roof of my son's school, and Vancouver School Board and the cell company backed off and took a hike, and then another cell phone company that was opening up in British Columbia donated a cross to the church right next door to the school, and they hid inside that cross microwave transmitters for their cell phone network. And the fight was on, and so I got active in that, I got knowledgeable in that, I called scientists in the United States, in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and they were supportive of what I was doing and what concerns I was raising, and so it sort of took over my life, and that's what I've been doing really ever since. The early technologies are classed as 1G, which is the analog, the early cell phones, and then 2G for voice and texting, then 3G for web browsing, and then what we currently have now is 4G for high-speed data and video streaming. Now 5G is going to be much higher frequencies, a lot of it, a large portion is going to be much higher frequencies and more powerful. But the main difference in my concern for that is that up till this point, you see, like I've fought cell towers all over the world, really, and they're like 120 feet or more, spread out at quite some distance. Whereas the 5G, because of the high frequencies and the way that it's going to be set out, instead of it being like above us, it's going to be with us. It's going to be right where we live, on like it showed in the movie, on telephone poles, post boxes, other things, and you can walk by those things, you can drive by them, and you wouldn't even notice, but your body notices for sure. So, you know, that's my main concern. We still got some time to go, and we'll open it up to questions in a little while. I'm sure Farren's got a few things that he'd like to say. I'm not 100% against it, because there's certain things that make it actually could be better than what it is, than what we're subject to today. Because even though the transmitters are all going to be at like, whatever, 30 feet instead of 120 feet or 150 feet miles apart, these transmitters are all going to be within 250 feet. So the grid is just going to be 250 feet. It's going to be everywhere. Like, you're not going to be able to get away from it. But how they work is that the information gets to those transmitters by like fiber optic cable. And fiber optics don't give off electromagnetic fields or radiation. So the only problematic part of that is when it gets to the transmitter, and it also gets to, therefore, then gets to the phone. So a solution that some of the people that are in that movie are working on is to put what's called a noise field on the transmission, on the actual wireless transmission. So if the frequencies are going like this, there will be like a mirror image going the other way to balance it and neutralize it, so that our cell membranes, every cell in our body won't react adversely to it. And it's actually the adverse reaction of our cells to that radiation that's man-made, that's we've never evolved in, that actually is what causes our adverse health effects. I'll get into that a bit more probably when you ask some more questions, but maybe I'll just turn it over to Farren now, and you can take it from there.
Well, very much like Milt, through a series of circumstances, I became involved in this when I worked in an aspect of Chinese medicine, and I worked with acupuncture meridians, and I did something called electrodermal screening, which allowed me, using a computer and a probe, to access vital information about the condition of acupuncture meridians. And when I worked for holistic dentists, we had a lot of patients who would come in who would be extremely sensitive to things like TVs, computers, cell phones. This is not even 10 years ago, this is about 10 years ago. And they would turn on a computer going into a room, or they would turn it off. They were not able to tolerate fluorescent lighting, compact fluorescent light bulbs. And so I started to investigate why these people were being affected. And sure enough, most of the people, almost all of them actually, about 95% of them, had a mouthful of silver amalgam fillings. And they were acting as antennas, the silver amalgam fillings, because they're 51% mercury. And mercury is the most conductive element on the face of the earth. That's why they use it in thermostats and other applications. And the more I got into the work of Robert Becker and Dietrich Klinghardt and different psychologists and different medical doctors who are taking an active interest into electrohypersensitivity, I had the good fortune of working with Dr. Magda Havas, Martin Blank, Deborah Davis, and so my interest has always been in the health implications of this. I know a lot about the technology, and my business is actually testing homes and cell towers, cell phones, cordless phones, electrical fields, magnetic fields, the whole inside of homes, neighborhoods. And I actually had a call today where somebody wanted me to come and test. They were looking at buying a new house, and the more young people are approaching me about, I'd like to buy a house, but I can see the power lines from where our porch is, and I'd like to find out if it has any influence on my house. And they're interested in the magnetic field or the electric field coming off of these high tension power lines. And in this case, as soon as I turned on this meter, it went, just started acting up. And I looked down, and I'm getting 4,000 or 5,000 microwatts, and what's considered to be safe for daytime exposure is 10. And I was getting 5,000 right outside their door. And of course, they weren't ignoring, they were interested in the power lines, they were ignoring about 35 cell antennas on a high-rise building about 6 blocks away. And it wasn't until I went around the trees that I could get a reception, get the cell antennas, because the trees will actually block it. And it was just a little opening, and the woman almost had a heart attack when I showed her. So, And I wanted to add a little bit more to what Milt was saying about the 5G. And I've had the occasion of testing the electrical infrastructure that's needed to power a cell antenna. And none of the people that do the building biology work or home inspectors, electrical inspectors take this into consideration. It takes a tremendous amount of electrical energy to power up the cell antennas. And when I take my magnetic field meter up to the base of a cell antenna, it's probably 100, 200 milligauss for what's considered to be safe as 1. And now like Milt is saying, the antennas that they're going to put up are going to be of a radius of about 250 meters, or 250 feet actually. And every one of those has got to be powered by electricity, which means that you're going to have, like say, one block of say Pender Avenue, you could have 6 antennas on that one street. You multiply that times all the streets in Vancouver, and you're looking at thousands and thousands of antennas, because they actually require a cellular antenna for each network, and then they have something called MIMO, which is multiple input, multiple output, and then they have to be able to amplify the signal, and then they have to be able to aim it. There's a lot of technology. It's 4 separate technologies to get this to work. And in the city of Los Angeles, which is a radius of 5 miles, right now there's about 1,000 cellular antennas. And when they fully deploy 4G network, it's going to go to about 2,000 antennas. But when they go to 5G, it's going to go to 10,000 more antennas in downtown Los Angeles. So it's 10 times the number. Now imagine what that's going to be like in downtown Vancouver. I can take this meter, and once I come across the Burrard Street Bridge with this meter on, it never stops ringing the whole time I'm downtown Vancouver. And that's going to, just imagine that being multiplied by 1,000 times. It boggles the mind what's going to happen. So if anybody has any questions, we have a wireless microphone somewhere, I think it's up here. And we can, here she comes.
Yeah, Vanna White is just coming down here right now.
Hi. So is there a way to make it right? Do we only have to oppose this change, which I don't think we can, or there's a way to kind of make it right? Still use the 5G benefits, but
Well, there is a way, like I was mentioning now, from scientists I'm talking to and engineers back in the eastern United States. They have the availability of the noise field technology right now. It's going to take another about $500,000, which sounds like a lot of money. It's more than I have on my wall. How about you? But really, in the whole scheme of things, it's not. Then they have to test it, and that Dr. Belpom that was in the documentary there, he has the capability to do the blood test and that sort of thing to prove it out once the noise field is operative. And Dr. Carlo, who ran the wireless industry's research program and designed all the measurement parameters for that 6-year, $28.5 million study, would be part of that team as well. So they're in place, and they're just doing a fundraising situation right now to get it to where it's done and proven.
and that can be applied to anything. It can be home router, it can be smart meter,
Yes.
it can be any.
Yes, exactly right. And it'll be a software thing as well. So it can be on your phone, it can be on the infrastructure as well. So that would actually make it safe. My concern is that, people, I've written several articles a number of years back on honeybees with colony collapse disorder, and I think that wireless is a big part of that. It's a parallel to the rollout of the wireless and the decline of the honeybees. And so my concern is not just us folks, because you can, not use a phone or whatever, but I mean, you can't really escape from it. But I think of the honeybees and the birds and the plants and, all the flora and fauna. I mean, everything with living cells is affected, and even things without living cells, like train tracks, those spikes that go in there. I've seen, there was a study done a number of years back. If that's for me, can you take a message? I got mine turned off. So. That they were actually, they increased the rust. There's Dr. Andrew Mikrowski out of Ottawa that has done a lot of study on that, and he says the negative effect on the metal infrastructure is in the billions of dollars annually, and it's not even being recognized. But my concern is primarily all living things, and so that's why I've been working on this thing for a couple of decades.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. My question is, I use my cell phone. I don't put it against my head. I mean, just common sense. But I'm thinking, well, I hold it in my hand all the time. So is there a health risk attached to that? And I'm not asking as doctors, I'm just saying from...
Well, actually, there's, I used to be something called a reflexologist, and you have 4,000 nerve endings in the palms of your hand.
Right.
And you have 7,000 in your feet. I know you're not going to hold your cell phone with your feet, but you hold it in your hands, and it's affecting, and every part of your body is laid out in your hands. And not only that, you have 12 different acupuncture meridians on this side of your wrist and on this side. And I just spoke with my acupuncturist the other day because I'm concerned about all the people I see wearing these Fit watches and the Apple watches and all that. And the major meridians, I think it's your lung, your heart, and your spleen and pancreas, I believe, are on the back side of your hand, right underneath an Apple Watch. And those watches transmit about 1,400 microwatts once a minute. So your acupuncture meridians, which is your whole body, is being energized by this frequency and by this radiation that the body doesn't recognize as being natural. And it's a real challenge because everybody's addicted to the technology, and it's actually it's designed that way. And there's some incredible research that's coming out and papers being published even in the last month that are showing the implications of social media and how influential it is and how it's actually affecting they call it the fabric of society. And I just finished watching a fantastic film that has nothing to do with wireless, but it has everything to do with phones and with the use of phones and the technology, but nothing about the health implications. It has more to do with how it's affecting people psychologically, how it's affecting their IQ and their lack of empathy, and what it's doing to the brain and brain waves.
Right.
So,
what's the name of it? What's the name of it?
I can't hear you.
What's the name of the film?
Oh, it's an interesting name. It's called Stare Into the Lights, My Pretty. And if you type that into the internet, try to avoid using Google, use whatever else you could use, Bing or any of the others. But it's all about the power of Google, the power of Facebook, and how it's influencing all of society, politicians, finance. It's a fascinating film. And actually, at the end of it, at the conclusion of the film, they make one statement, and one of the lead moderators, and he said, you know what? This has got it's called ABC. A is for armed forces, B is for bureaucracy, and C is for corporate use. And basically what he said was, you know what, this is a harsh thing to say, but it needs to be destroyed. So take a look. I'm gonna recommend, there's somebody in the audience has written a fabulous book. I don't think she'll mind if I mention her name. She's way over there in the corner. That's Dr. Mari Swingle. And Mari has written a fantastic book. Mari's a neuroscientist. Yes?
Doctor of psychology.
Okay. And her book is called I Minds. And it shows the power of the addictive component of, I'll just say, about games and about screen time in general, and being, so engrossed in that you ignore a lot of other things. So
I'd just like to add one thing to what Farren just said. I was talking to a scientist earlier this week or the end of last week, and he was saying, you've got a cell phone, you pay it every month, right? Like, yeah, you pay it every month. So you bought in. So you bought in. So when someone criticizes something that you bought in on and you're committed to, and you do it every month now, it's an automatic. You resent people criticizing what you bought into. That's all part of that.
Any other questions?
yes, right here.
I have a question.
Microphone.
I have an iPhone.
Wait till she gives you a mic so they can.
I have an iPhone that actually was built by, I know someone who builds them out of old iPhones. So mine is built out of 3 iPhones, because I always drop mine and they get run over by cars and what have you. But anyway, I met someone last week who has one of those machines, I forget what they call it, you can read the
The
energy.
meter.
What's it called?
Just
meter.
a radio frequency
Yeah.
analyzer.
And so they decided, this lady and her daughter decided to read my cell phone, iPhone, with that reader. And it was going off the roof. It was $12.75. And she said it's because it had 3 antennae in it. I wonder if you could know anything about that, or what. Obviously it's dangerous, I gotta get rid of it, but I just wonder if you know why that would be, because it's awfully high, and that's just being on.
Well, iPhones have, Apple has their own sub-infrastructure. So if your iPhone will form a network by someone else's phone, someone else's iPhone, like zoom, rather than another type of phone that'll go to the tower and then somewhere else. So it's they communicate, like a lot of areas, like in Africa, they use the iPhones because they don't have towers.
Oh, so that's what makes it register so high.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. But distance is your friend with radio frequency, like further you are away. So when they showed the instructions there about holding it, further, when I first started this thing, they didn't have that. Like, you could hold it right next to your head. That would be well within the regulations, but because there's more power coming out of the phones, what that means is that if you just hold it there, it still qualifies as safe under the safety regulations. So the more powerful they get, the more, and then it's also putting the responsibility over to the consumer rather than making the phone safer.
Sorry.
You again.
You have to use a microphone, otherwise people can't hear you, and it's very frustrating.
I just wanted to say that when I first got a cell phone, I was one of those rare people who, they were the little flip phones, and my son got it for me. I've never bought one, but I would use it, and I couldn't use it because anytime I used it, I'd get a massive migraine. It would last for days. The whole side of my face felt like it was that squiggliness you see, all watery, that's liquidy. It felt like that. I couldn't concentrate, my eye would hurt. And my son worked he was a cell phone rep at LD, London Drugs, for a while. He doesn't work there now. And he said, I was one of those rare people that would come in and make those complaints. They usually were women, actually, but there was the odd person who had those complaints. So I'd never be able to hold it against my head, which is good, but
Yeah,
just because I feel that, and other people don't, or whoever doesn't, it doesn't mean that we're not all affected the same way, right? Or does
no,
it?
for sure, you've got, everyone's got different genetics, then you've got different toxic loads for where you lived, what you ate, all those different things. I would say, the one thing that you can do that's helpful, and I'm sure Farren would concur, is self-care. The better you take care of yourself, the better your adaptive capacity is. There's a brand new website called adaptationproject.org. Adaptation Project. That was just put together by Dr. Carlo and some other people back in Washington, D.C. And they're going to be helping you to enhance your capabilities to adapt. So it would include, diet, exercise, meditation, socializing, social connections, laughter. It's all kinds of things that we could do just on a daily, regular basis to boost our immune system and keep ourselves in a better shape, better space. You got a
Thank you.
question back there and a question here? Sorry.
For many years, I've heard contradictory opinion as to whether a wired hands-free, just earbuds or something, is better or worse. And I guess the argument that they might be worse is that the wire between your ears and the phone acts as an antenna and actually attracts more.
Yeah, that was I haven't heard that much lately because the earbuds are, like I use earbuds regularly because they're more insulated. But for anybody that uses the Bluetooth thing in their ear, when your phone communicates to the tower is constantly blasting out that radiation, that signal, and it's your phone that adjusts the power. Whereas if you have a Bluetooth, which is right in your ear, they don't adjust. It's like a full tilt blast the whole time. So I see people using those things, and I shudder.
So how are earbuds are different?
Well, I just want to add something to what Milt said about the Bluetooth technology. If you have the headset in the ear, I've actually tested the Bluetooth where I've had the phone sitting here and the Bluetooth earpiece is over by, say, 20 feet away, and I can actually pick up the Bluetooth signal with my meter. So dial the phone, and the Bluetooth I can pick it up anywhere in here. So it'll be anywhere that's in the anybody that's in the proximity of that is being irradiated by it. What I generally recommend to people is to use what's called a Blue Tube headset. It's based on the stethoscope technology. So it has a wire that goes from the phone. Hopefully the phone is in a protective case, which is sending the radiation away from you as opposed to into your hip or your groin area. And it has a wire that goes up to about your shoulder, and then from there to your earpiece, it goes into an air tube. And they're very, very clear. There's probably, do you have yours here, Carl?
No, I don't.
Okay. They're probably, I guess, about $50 from Dr. Mercola's website. But using one of the wired headsets is a no-no because that wire becomes an antenna, and instead of it radiating here or here, it's traveling all the way up your body and radiating the whole side of your body.
And also if you wear a phone on, like you saw that in that video where the women were putting it in their bra or whatever else, if you're, like a lot of guys wear it on their, like business guys will wear it on their belt. And your red blood, the vast majority of your red blood cells are made in your hip bones. So that's just a really bad place to subject those brand new cells to radiation.
So a couple of points of clarification and a question. For the person who asked about possible damage to their hand, there was one video that I saw of someone very knowledgeable about the issue who had a tumor in his hand, had a tumor in his hip, and had a tumor in his head. And yeah, and so he said, you know, and he held it in his hand a lot. He had it on his hip in the holster, and obviously he put it against his head. The other thing I want to bring up is Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, was talking about what a challenge it was to get the iPhone to work because there are 4 different antennas and technologies in there. So there's Bluetooth, there's Wi-Fi, there's the cell phone, and then there's GPS. So, you know, at one point one iPhone came out and the reception would be negatively impacted, you know, when you hold it in your hand. We are antennas. I mean, anybody who doubts that, if you have an FM or AM radio and the signal is weak and you put your hand closer to it, the signal gets strong. So the question is, how likely do you think it is that the cell phone companies, the carriers, will adopt noise field if it's going to actually implicate them and confirm that cell phones aren't safe? Or are they going to try and do it under the radar? And what's the time frame that it will be implemented? Best estimate.
There's a number of factors. These cell phone brain tumor lawsuit that was launched initially in 2001 is going to be back on the burner again, probably by the summer. It's in the Superior Court of Washington, D.C., and you can imagine the industry's just thrown millions of dollars and hundreds of lawyers at it for 17 years, and they haven't been able to throw it out. Like I've got over 21,000 studies in my database, and I've got several other databases as well. So there's ample science, but it's like they said in the movie. I mean, it's not just the science. There's politics. There's all kinds of things. So, because it's going to be software, that's going to be driven by consumers. You know, when the wireless industry is expanding from 1G to 2 to 3 to 4, now they want to do 5. They're saying, well, we're not just doing that because we feel like doing that. We're doing that to meet customer demand. So they're tuned into the customer demand. So as customers would download that app on their phone to make their phone safe and their Wi-Fi router and whatever other technologies they've got, then there would be an inducement there. And particularly if, congressmen and senators, I mean, they saw Ted Kennedy, congressmen and senators got that app on their phone. I think there'd be a lot of political pressure for the industry to put it on theirs. And they can do it with a Nova Contandra or whatever that. There's all kinds of euphemisms you can use about enhancing technological enhancement rather than a safety feature. You know what I mean? So there's more than one way to skin a cat or whatever.
I was just wondering if the landline phones that sit in a cradle and you pick them up, are those harmful, just as harmful as the cell phone?
You talking about cordless?
Yeah, they are
Yeah,
cordless, that's
sure.
right.
Yeah, Leonard Hardell, he was in that.
Well, they're wired to sit in the cradle, right, to get their
Depends on what it's
charge,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
If
they're
it's-
just
if it's
as harmful.
a DECT phone, yeah, that you're walking around, and it's wireless.
There's quite a few of the brands on the market will transmit 24 hours a day. And it doesn't matter if you pick it up or not, but I've tested many of them and I'll get maybe 20,000 microwatts per square meter right at the phone in the cradle. And when you pick it up off the cradle and push talk, it goes to 40,000. I've had them go as high as 100,000. Depends on the make and the manufacturer of the phone.
One other thing, have you heard of bioprotector? It's a
Yes.
little device that apparently is to negate.
Well,
Are they?
every time we do this, people ask about the buttons, pendants,
Yeah.
jewels, and whatnot. The thing is that they don't influence the meter readings at all. I've actually taken one of those devices. It was in a shopping bag, and there was about $10,000 worth of these devices. And I put them in. I put my meter in the bag, and I put all these chips on top of my meter, and then I had somebody phone. Make a call with a cell phone, and my meter just went crazy. It wasn't influenced by the buttons at all.
Let me just make it very clear. Those gizmos, they say that it blocks, 98, 99, 100% of the radiation. The radiation is the signal. So if that little gizmo blocked 100% of the radiation, your phone wouldn't work. So, but if it only blocked, 95% of the radiation, your phone would have to crank up so high, I mean, you'd melt your ear, it's, yeah, it's.
There's another component to that too, is that people that put the chips on their phone, they have a false sense of security. So they just go crazy and use the phone. Oh, let's not bother me. And
Yeah.
I actually gave those to my children, and then I took them back
Farren,
when they weren't looking.
Farren, we've talked about Faraday cages.
Oh, I can.
Hi. We've talked about Faraday cages on smart meters and your Wi-Fi router. And we didn't finish the talk, and you said they could be dangerous to put them on. Do
What
you
was
know
the last
why?
part? What was the last part you said?
I said we didn't finish the talk about the Faraday cages that this guy in the United States is making to put on the smart meter outside or your router in your office or in your home. And you said to me, you have to watch it, what that's about, but we didn't finish the conversation. So could you tell me what would happen when you put a Faraday cage on the smart meter or the router?
Well, my experience has been that if you put a cage, whether it's aluminum mesh or tin foil or whatever it is, you have to be certain that the signal can still be read by BC Hydro wirelessly. So what we found to be quite effective is to use a reflective window film, and we cut a piece that goes all the way around the smart meter and leaves the face exposed and a small portion on the bottom of the meter that allows the signal to get out. Some of the ones that are on the market will actually, concentrate the signal, and they'll drive it back into the house. Because currently the smart meters, the way they deploy the signal is it goes out like a big beach ball out from the meter, goes out like this. And about 10% goes backwards into the house. And that gets broken up somewhat because the meter base is made out of metal. And then you've got the electrical panel usually right behind it. But all I can say is that they need to be tested to see how often they're broadcasting and at what strength. Because sometimes, like when we did your neighbor's house there, we didn't get much. But every once in a while, like maybe once or twice a day, it'll do what we call a data dump. It'll just dump all the data from the day, and then you get a massive spike. And the only way to figure that out is to do what's called data logging, which I can do with this meter and a data logger, and then just let it run, and it'll give me the spikes over the course of a 24-hour period. Nida, do we have to be out of here in 15 minutes or
What time is it?
quarter after?
13.
I think we're okay for a couple more.
I wouldn't mind taking the mic over to 7 o'clock.
Sure.
We could reconvene out in the patio.
Farren, you had actually set up your meter and measured my smart meter, and it was 200 and something times an hour. So
Right.
the other thing I want to bring up is home cordless phones. The danger in those is that you don't use speakerphone, you do put it up to your head. A cell phone will modulate its power, so the closer you are to the tower, the less power the cell phone needs to use to push the signal. That's when you have 5 dots on your phone. When you only have one dot on your phone, it cranks up the power way up. So home cordless phones do not have that technology. They don't modulate it. They're always at 100%. That's the base station and also the phone. So just to be aware of that.
I just went to, a number of years ago, a fellow asked me if I just come over to his place and check it out. And I walked in and turned on, not that one, but another RF meter. And it just went nuts. And I said, well, he
That's
said,
a
oh, I've
technical
got,
term.
yeah. And I said, well, what kind of phone do you got? A wired phone? He said, oh no, we've got the cordless phone. So just go and unplug that. I left the thing going nuts. And I said, just go and unplug that. And it just shut right off, like it just stopped making any noise whatsoever. He just looked at me like, oh, I have that on all day. And he had 2 little kids and right in their living room. It's just brutal.
So there's one, we don't have much time, but I'd like to leave you with one bit of advice. If there's any way that you could clean up your bedrooms and get rid of any technology that's in your bedrooms, including charging stations for your phone, any corded lamps, unplug them. Cordless phones, of course, not to have them in the bedroom. No extension cords underneath your bed. And if you can, and if you're not too nervous, is to shut off the circuit breaker that sends the power to your bedroom. This is being talked a lot in the building biology community, and it's coming up on the internet a lot because people, one of the biggest side effects of all of this technology is lack of sleep. And not only the lack of sleep, but the technology is interpreted by the brain as light, and it doesn't allow your brain, your pineal gland, to produce melatonin. And there's a lot of studies coming out now. Another good movie you might want to see is called Resonance, Beings of Frequency. And they talk a great deal in there about the production of melatonin. 12,000 studies showing the adverse effects of using specifically cordless and cellular technology and its influence. And I wrote down a couple of things here that Dr. Coghill was talking about on the film, that women that have breast cancer have 1/10 the level of melatonin in their body that a normal woman would have, a healthy woman. And if a man has prostate cancer, he has 1/2 of the necessary amount of melatonin. And if you have autism, it's all the way down to 1/4 of what you should have. And that can be just from using cell phones during the day up until the point you go to sleep. And if you have a cordless phone in your bedroom or a Wi-Fi router that's running, you're setting yourself up for poor sleep.
Or a clock radio on your night table there for your alarm in the morning or whatever else. I measure those things where you put the meter on the person's pillow. It's like, ooh.
Yeah,
Do you mind? Sorry, I thought you were done. I'm sorry. I have one more question. Is that okay? One more question?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's just a super quick one. I was just wondering, for Wi-Fi versus like making a phone call on Wi-Fi or making a phone call on cellular data, is there a difference? Is it worse one way or the other, or is it the same impact?
You better answer that one.
So she's talking about technology
Wi-Fi or
in phones, or that she's talking about technology where Rogers allows you to use the Wi-Fi network to make a cellular telephone call.
Yeah, I'm not knowledgeable on that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'd say it's
Probably the same.
It's
okay?
probably just as bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And one more? Just one more?
Sure.
Hi, it's not really a question, it's more a comment about the film tonight, and I'm glad Milt touched on the environment, because that was one thing I felt lacking in the film tonight, was it didn't talk about, we can try to protect ourselves, but the birds, the bees, the trees aren't able to. So I think we all need to be cognizant of that. I work in the school district in Surrey as a supervision aide, so I'm with the kids at lunchtime. I'm constantly talking to the kids at my school about putting their phones away. And today, I'm not very popular with a special education assistant because after I had a talk with the grade 7 girls about putting their phones away, why they shouldn't be using them, how dangerous they are, blah, blah, blah. There's an SEA sitting there on her phone. I went over to her and I said, what kind of example do you think you're setting to these kids? These things are dangerous. You need to do some research on them. And as long as you're there as an adult using this phone, the kids around you think they're safe. So I think that's something we all need to be aware of, is how we're using this. Because if we're showing the kids that we're using them all the time, then the kids are going to think they're safe.
You know, I would just thank you, Liz, and I would like to embellish that a little bit. When I convinced the Vancouver School Board to pass a resolution banning cell towers from school property or within 1,000 feet of school property. That was in like 2004 or something like that. And the school board, they listened to the science that I presented and whatever else, and they're all like, yeah, we're going to do that. So they passed this resolution, and it went all over the world because other school boards took it on and whatever. And then they put wireless Wi-Fi in the school, like all that work I did, and it's like you just nuked it.
I think that's it.
We done?
I think so.
Thanks for coming, you guys. I appreciate
Great job. You should take this on the road.
How do you carry yourself?
no adaptation project. If that's wrong, send me an email. But I think that's Great. Yeah. Sure. Sure. How you doing, Dal? Did you learn anything there? You're kind of an expert, aren't you? That's got my phone number and my email.
Yeah, I'm always open to just a few days. I'm sorry, my best friend just decided to get married. Totally understand.
So you're still
Thanks
down
for
here?
considering. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd target parents. I hear it started falling out. So elders too. I'm actually going to Victoria too.
My name is Paul. I know Farren.
Lost generation.
I don't think so. But he may have spoken about moving. When did we?
You were at some function for the Advocacy or something.
I've been at a few of those.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's very possible. Yeah, there's a building I lived in when I was very lucky.
Mine are backlash.
My landlord was kind enough to
My
basically
generation
Faraday
maybe
cage
a
for my
little
apartment.
bit younger.
And one of the people refused to have smart meters for our whole building.
Yeah.
Because he would have had, all the 74 units. So she just has one master unit
I hear ya.
on the property. It's just, yeah, so she,